So quick timeline, I like to bring people back. It seems like forever ago that this happened, but clear back in March, we started seeing what was going to happen here. And we were hoping actually at that time to get to just to finish up winter quarter and get through spring break. We ended up officially kind of limiting operations, what we called it, basically sending everyone home around March 19th, right at the end of winter quarter, which worked pretty well for us to try to work that out. Little did we know at that time, of course, that we still wouldn't be back. There are signs up on campus. I walk through the buildings from time to time, signs up saying we'll be back like mid-April or something, and just I think people just had no idea about the impact of this. So we had some pretty large impacts to our classes right away during spring quarter, and this was a big impact on us. We ended up moving spring break, extending spring break by a week and starting spring quarter a week later, so our faculty could change over their classes to online. Which I've taught online classes. If you've ever done anything like this, it's something like this usually takes several months to do, and we had faculty doing this in about 10 days. So we ended up moving 1,135 classes online. But we still had to cancel a whole bunch of our classes. Mostly those were career and technical education, so our welding, our automotive. We were able to do a little bit of healthcare face-to-face through the governor's orders, but pretty much anything that required you to be face-to-face, and if we couldn't get it online, we had to cancel it. It ended up being about 30% or so of our classes that we had to drop for spring quarter. So we tried to mitigate this where we could for students. So any students who were real close to graduation, we worked with them individually to try to get the classes they need so we wouldn't hold them up. We ended up waiving a bunch of fees for our GED students and our adult basic ed so that they could still finish. Unfortunately, like everybody, we had to cancel all of our spring sports, but we were able to do a lot of our PE online. And the PE staff was pretty amazing about what they were able to change over to an online environment. I've heard this from other places now too. A lot of our science faculty basically walked around their labs with their phones or with cameras and recorded their lectures so that they could, their students could watch what they were doing online and getting that done. We mailed a bunch of lab kits, biology and chemistry kits to students so that they could actually do some of this stuff at home. And then increased our virtual simulations for some of our healthcare, and actually some of our automotive, actually we were able to do some virtual simulations on that as well. And then beefed up our library. We already have a pretty robust online system for our library, but our librarians are amazing and did a whole bunch more online that they're able to do to support students and staff. We actually got some attention for some really cool things we did with our ESL students. And so this is a picture of my Oregon News, State of Oregon News, where we got called out. We have about 400 or so students that are learning English, that's English second language. And, they're from Mexico, they're from Asia, from actually all over India, all over the place that are here learning English as a second language. And those are all face-to-face classes, but they were able to shift those, and each and every student is able to still learn English online. I got to sit in a couple of those classes this quarter, and I tell you, it was pretty impressive how much work they were doing with the faculty there. And so we got some nice attention for that. And then some of the other work that we did, I already mentioned some of the classes that we were able to change over and really be creative with in a really short amount of time. And in our student services, of course, too, we had to shift all of this over really fast. And so we did a number of things for student services where, we set up chats so students could chat, obviously email, phone calls, and the rest so that people could still get this. Our financial aid office ended up doing, it was pretty amazing what they did all from home. My notes here so I don't forget that one. I can't find it. I changed my around here, so my notes are all out of whack. 3.2 million in financial aid to over 1,250 students that they did in just a few weeks as well, that they're able to get done from home, and able to set up systems where students could sign things, electronically, so they could come in. Counseling was also kind of a big deal. With so much stress everyone was under, we were able to do telehealth counseling and expanded that for students who needed that. Our athletics worked with all of our athletes to make sure that they kept their eligibility and kept them enrolled in school. They all get to transfer the eligibility for another year since their sports got canceled, so that was great. And then our Veterans Center was reaching out, our Disability Resources were still working with students as well. So some pretty amazing work from staff to make sure all the things were still going. The CARES Act, if you didn't know, there's a couple challenges with it. It funded, for college students, it funded anybody who was eligible for Pell and eligible for financial aid, which a lot of our students don't get financial aid. Either they're DACA students or they're Dreamer students, or they're not eligible for financial aid. So our foundation stepped up, and actually this 152,000 is an old number. It's about 176,000 now that they've raised for students to directly support students that needed help with whether it's technology or help with some rent or something else that they've been able to distribute. We were able to get 200 Chromebooks. It was just a good timing on that we already had an order in right before COVID came for Chromebooks for use on campus, and we ended up checking all those out to students. All those got checked out to students right away. There was such a run on iPads and Chromebooks at the start of COVID because all these school districts needed them suddenly across the country that we had good timing on that. And then usually we award about $500,000 in scholarships, but the foundation stepped up this year and increased that dramatically too, to $755,000 that they awarded in scholarships this year. And then there were some other really creative things that happened. Our yearly student art show was held completely online. I don't think it's up anymore, but you could actually go in and see all of the student art. And there was, there's ceramics, there's paintings, there's some video. They did their whole awards ceremony via Zoom, which was really neat. Theater, I thought, was really impressive. They just did this last week. They did 3 one-act plays, all via Zoom, with actors there that they set up because they had to cancel their performances. And and I have to say they pulled it off. It was pretty interesting to watch. Watch these actors that were on their own Zoom cameras there. But they did a nice job of putting that together. And then just last Friday, and I know Dave's on this call too, I thought this worked out pretty well. We asked our graduates what they wanted to do for graduation, and we offered them a virtual one that a lot of places are doing. We offered to move it to December and do a traditional graduation, or we offered to do some kind of a drive-in graduation. And our students were really clear; they were sick of virtual. They wanted to come in person, and they wanted to do it sooner rather than later. So our staff set up this amazing drive-through where they came in off of Beaver Creek Road, went into a parking lot, picked up a bag full of swag in it with their gowns, put those on, and then they came around right in front of the ITC. We had a stage set up where they got to walk across, pick up a diploma, get a picture taken, and then I did fist bumps with everybody, and then the board was there cheering them on. And probably the best part was there's that piece where you get to turn your tassel at the very end from right to left to signify your graduate. So every time we did that with each graduate, all the board whooped up and cheered, and everybody got real excited when we did that. But lots of cars with signs and full of family and taking pictures. It ended up being actually a really fun graduation. Some people say we should do it that way every year, which I think is a really bad idea, but for this year it worked out really well. So we've got some budget impacts like everybody does through all these things. And I'll just say before I get into some of these figures, these are changing quite a lot, and I can talk about that too. But as we move into this summer and fall, there's some real impacts that we've got to deal with. So as I said, we were down about 30%, 31% for spring term in tuition, and that's about $1 million loss that we took a hit on spring quarter just in tuition. And we get funding from 3 areas. So we get tuition, we get local property tax. This is just an estimate based on the last recession that we're anticipating losing about $300,000. We don't know for sure, but depending on how many people are paying their property taxes or able to do that, we've got an estimate we're going to lose some there. This is the big change. We were initially told by the governor's office in April to expect and what was for us ended up being almost a 25% cut this next year, which would have been about $4.8 million. And to put that in context, if you're looking at our personnel at the college, personnel costs for the college, it's about $50 million, a little over $50 million that we have that. So it was almost a 10% cut just this year. Well, that changed in the last couple of weeks to about 1.7 million due to some things at the state, some excess funding that they had, and some the state not spending all of their allocation this spring. And so that got dropped down to 1.7. And now we're actually hearing, and Dave was the one that let me know about this, that the governor and the Ways and Means are working on a way to keep higher ed harmless for this next year. So we may come out of this from the state with a very low cut. And we'll find that out probably in August when the special session happens again. So that's pretty good news for us, because we've been doing looking at a number of things, and I think that's my next slide. On how to mitigate that. Actually, I maybe took that out, where we'd already furloughed all of our part-time staff because there wasn't any work for them. We had been looking at layoffs for part-time and some administrators, but we're putting those on hold right now. We have instigated some furloughs for administrative staff, and then we've got a hiring freeze, and we're looking at some other pieces that's coming into this next year, depending on how much of a cut we have to do. So more about the CARES Act. The way it was structured is that it was about Pell Grants, and really favored universities who have full-time students, and the way the formula worked for Pell Grants. So community colleges across the country really got a lower share. And this is something when I talk to legislators is really important to know, because I think people believe that we got more money than we did. And half of that money has to go directly to students. And it ended up being closer to $475 per student that we've already sent out checks to the ones that are eligible if they got financial aid. And then the other half we got to keep. So the other 860,000 or whatever that was, we got to keep to cover our COVID expenses. But as you saw, that didn't even cover our tuition losses for the year. So, as we look at more federal opportunities for this, and we're seeing mixed messages about what will come through there, but some sort of relief to come through. We're really hoping they do some other kind of a formula, whether it's for workforce training or looking at headcount as opposed to Pell Grant, which looks at full-time enrollment equivalency, because we 70% of our students are part-time, so we always will lose out when they do that full-time equivalency figure. So a few mitigating factors. Our buildings are closed, so we figure we're saving about $50,000 in utility bills. The big question for us, usually in recessions, our enrollments go way up, like double digits, 10, 20% up. And so we're seeing some indications. Summer right now is up about 6%. It's summer's a really small quarter, so we don't know quite yet what that will mean. We're just starting to register here in the last couple weeks for fall. So probably about mid-July, we'll know if we really do have a big bump for this fall. The real issue for us is we just, with the governor's new executive order last week, now are able to start offering some face-to-face instruction, as long as we can meet the Clackamas County healthcare requirements and have social distancing and have face coverings and the rest. So we'll be able to offer some limited instruction this summer, and we're working to get back into some of those things like welding and auto, some of those ones we weren't able to do at all. And then we've got a reopening work group that is focused on getting the college back open this fall to the extent that we can. Like a lot of places, I think it'll come kind of in phases and sort of soft openings, and there'll be a number of classes continuing online, a number of offices that will probably continue online through the fall, depending on where we're at. The worst thing for us, frankly, would be to have us go backwards. Like if we tried to open everything and then for some reason, the county has to go backwards and send everybody back home. That was really disruptive, or it can be really disruptive. And so we're trying to play it safe a little bit and say we're going to have some face-to-face, but a lot of it will probably be online still this fall. We've got an innovation team that's working to redo a number of our programs and classes in shorter spots, so you can get those done in a few weeks as opposed to 10, and trying to look at ways to do things that are more of a hybrid, partially online, partially face-to-face, and some other ways that we can really respond more quickly and for people that so that people can get the training that they need. Oh, here's the gap. So these were some of the other things I did. I mentioned most of these. We had about a 1.5 million PERS reserve that looks like we're going to deplete sooner rather than we wanted to kind of mitigate this. We still have to discuss that. And we've got a number of different funds that we're looking to raid to deal with some of these costs. As I said, as that state funding change, though, we'll have more time now as we plan ahead. The message we're getting from the governor's office in the state is that while we're okay for this year, it's the 21-23 biennium where there's a big cliff coming. And so we're going to have to do what we can to prepare for that. My last slide, is just really a reminder that we are really economic engines. We can spin on a dime. I used this a number of times now. We did a program last year with a fabrication program with ICC Northwest and Canby, where we took about 14 students. Many of them had never picked up a welding torch before, taught them how to weld and fabricate big, huge containers that make beer and wine and the rest of those. And their wages increased in 6 months more than 2.5 times. And we can do things like that, 3 to 6 months, a year, and really get people trained and really get them back to work. So what we try to make sure everyone understands is we do all sorts of education, transfer, we help people learn English and the rest. But I think right now, as we think about all the people that are going to be unemployed or that are unemployed that need to get back, we are in the best position to really train them quickly and get them going. So that's an important message for us.